sat just to the north of the UK. Some tightly spaced isobars mean there's quite a brisk breeze around, and it's these weather fronts that are really driving in those showers. They have the potential to be heavy at times, also thundery in places as well. They're moving in on that brisk breeze, which is also heralding in some fresher conditions. And so we're losing the humidity that we've had around recently. So tonight should be much more comfortable for sleeping for everyone. Temperatures generally around 10 to 16 degrees Celsius. A few of those showers will just be lingering across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but they will eventually clear their way off. And generally for the southern half of England into Wales, tomorrow starts on a nice fine note, lots of bright sunny conditions around. We will always have those showers though across parts of the north and the west. To begin with, some of those could still be on the heavy side, with some longer spells of rain for Caithness, Sutherland and the Northern Isles also. Stronger winds here as well, perhaps close to gale strength for a time. The showers will continue in the north and west, but generally turn a little lighter as we head throughout the day. But if you're to the east of higher ground, so parts of County Antrim, County Down, but also eastern Scotland, eastern England, and more broadly across the southern half of the UK, it should be a relatively fine day overall, with some decent sunny spells in there. It's still going to be blustery though, and you will notice that wind if you are outside, making it feel on the slightly cooler theme of things, generally temperatures between 15 and 24 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, the cloud will start to build from the west, perhaps some longer spells of rain arriving for Northern Ireland later on in the day. This heralds in another very changeable theme as we head throughout the rest of the week. So further showers, longer spells of rain are still possible, at times even more thunderstorms in places. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 22nd of June. Thank you very much for your company. This is the weekend on GB News. Now,
a short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody.
Donald Trump says Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities have been obliterated after US stealth jets launched a daring bombing raid overnight, bringing America directly into Israel's war against Iran. And Sir Keir Starmer appears to support the strikes, saying Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. As tensions skyrocket, will the UK be dragged into a new Middle East conflict?
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat.
And meanwhile, protesters marched through central London with placards in support of Iran's supreme leader during a heated pro-Palestinian demonstration yesterday. After Trump strikes, could we see more disorder on the streets of the UK? Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel says this can't be tolerated.
It is right that the agencies look at everyone that are involved in these, not just protests, but those that are carrying the Iranian placards, you know, the propaganda, basically, defending the actions of Iran.
And the US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, will hold a news conference any minute now to give updates on President Trump's decision to strike Iranian nuclear sites. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you very much for your company this Sunday at lunchtime. I really appreciate it. Now, many of you will be waking up and concerned this morning about what's going on, and it is indeed a huge story. But rest assured, we will be bringing you updates throughout the show when anything important happens and let you know. But please, please, the most important thing is do not worry. We are here for you. You can talk to us, and it's very easy to do so. Just go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. Whatever you want to talk about, we are here for you. But before we get into today's stories, let's get the latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 1. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The United States has joined Israel in its attacks against Iran, dropping bombs on 3 major nuclear sites. President Donald Trump praised the attacks, which in his words have obliterated key enrichment facilities. B-2 bombers, which carried the bunker-buster munitions, which were capable of penetrating sites deep underground, are reported to have been used. Iran confirmed the attacks on Natanz, Isfahan and Fordow, but denied it has suffered a major blow. The UN Secretary-General has said he's gravely alarmed by the use of force and described the move as a direct threat to international peace and security. The British government has denied any involvement in military action, but says it was informed ahead of the strikes. In a national address, Donald Trump warned Tehran would face more devastating blows if it does not agree to peace.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
We're going to cross now to the Pentagon, where they are holding a press conference.
And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could. until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close. Just like Soleimani found out in the first term, Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it. This is not the previous administration. The President Trump said no nukes. He seeks peace, and Iran should take that path. He sent out a truth last night saying this: any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Signed, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Iran would be smart to heed those words. He's said it before, and he means it. I want to give recognition to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff, General Eric Kurilla at CENTCOM, who did a phenomenal job, he and his staff, all of CENTCOM. Policy, across the board, this was a joint effort, and across the Pentagon effort. I want to recognize the pilots who flew those bombers, who flew those fighters, who flew those refuelers, warriors. I want to recognize the sailors on those destroyers, in those subs, on those carriers, warriors, all of them. I want to recognize our soldiers doing air defense, base defense, QRF, warriors, all of them. Every American involved in this operation performed flawlessly. And I want to give recognition to our allies in Israel as well. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out of downtown Tehran, of these nuclear sites, in and out and back without the world knowing at all. In that way, it was historic. A strike that included the longest B-2 Spirit bomber mission since 2001 and the first operational employment of the MOP, a massive ordnance penetrator. The mission demonstrated to the world the level of joint and allied integration that speak to the strength of our alliance and our joint forces. As President Trump has stated, the United States does not seek war, but let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened. Iran should listen to the President of the United States and know that he means it, every word. I want to give congratulations to our Commander-in-Chief. It was an honor to watch him lead last night and throughout, and to our great American warriors on this successful operation. God bless our troops. God bless America. And we give glory to God for his providence and continue to ask for his protection. I turn it over now to the chairman for specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for recognizing all of our folks out there doing our nation's work, and nice to see everybody on this early Sunday morning. Last night, on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible. Their actions reflect the highest standards of the United States Armed Forces. This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordow and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the president stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the President clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the President and the Secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region. Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Green. No, behind you.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, can you tell me, was there a particular moment when the President decided to pull the trigger on this operation where he said, now, rather than being, something in the holster, now we're going to pull the trigger on it?
I would just say, having the opportunity to witness his leadership, he was fully committed to the peace process, wanted a negotiated outcome, gave Iran every single opportunity, and unfortunately was met by stonewalling, which is why he gave them plenty of time to continue to come to the table and give up enrichment, give up the nuclear program. But there was I won't say the particular moment, there was certainly a moment in time where he realized that it had to be a certain action taken in order to minimize the threat to us and our troops. Yeah.
General, you say that General Kurilla increased force protection in Iraq, Syria, and Gulf, in those areas. Were they given any advance warning the attacks were coming? And also, Mr. Secretary, When were congressional leaders notified? How long before the attacks took place?
Sure. To your first question, you know, the risk has clearly been rising over the last few weeks in the region. Based on that and not a particular awareness of this operation, we've made smart decisions to minimize the risk to U.S. forces in the region.
So they were given no advance warning?
No, sir.
And congressional?
They were notified after the planes were safely out. Well, we complied with the notification requirements of the War Powers Act.
After the attacks, they were notified?
They were immediately thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary. Two quick questions. Do you believe you completely destroyed Iranian nuclear program? And how about Iranian ballistic missiles? Your ally as Israel always saying that is biggest threat. And second question is very important. What will be your next step if Iran or militias under Iranian influence in the region attack U.S. interests or allies in the region?
And you can chime in on this too, Mr. Chairman. The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect. Which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there. Ultimately, wherever it may be, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or bases in the Gulf, as the president said, it would be, as the chairman said, it would be a very bad idea for Iran or its proxies to attempt to attack American forces. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together. And ultimately, that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes.
Thank you very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the president put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation. Yes, hold on. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question for the Secretary and the Chairman. How was this strike coordinated with the Israelis on a strategic level, militarily, and on a tactical level? Was there any direct Israeli military participation in this operation?
Well, I would say certainly Israel had an incredible military success, especially at the beginning and ongoing, in degrading Iranian capabilities, in degrading Iranian launchers, MRBMs. It's been incredible to watch what our ally Israel has been able to do. And there certainly have been conversations. I mean, General Kurilla at CENTCOM has worked closely in the defense of Israel for many years. And part of this operation was the defense of Israel and the ongoing defense of Israel. But as it pertains to this strike, this was U.S. operated and U.S. led.
We took advantage of some of the preparatory work that's been done over the past week and a half in terms of axis of approach. I won't get into the particulars, but as the Secretary said, it was a U.S. strike. We made sure we were not in the same piece of airspace and sky. Aside from that, that was the extent of it.
We'll take a couple more. Yeah, right there.
Question to the Secretary first. Are you concerned whatsoever now about the reaction from U.S. allies given the strike, particularly those in the Gulf? And to the Chairman, if I may, I understand you don't want to speak to specific assets, force protection measures, but do you anticipate at least having to bring in any further assets from other theaters to aid in force protection over the coming days?
We certainly understand the challenges of allies in the region, and we have been respectful and in working in collaboration with them as it pertains to basing and sensitivities there. Ultimately, they've got a lot of assets and people in those locations also where American troops are co-located. So that's a consideration of ours. We've been in close consultation with them, and we appreciate the support that we have got.
Thanks for the question on sort of the global picture. And as you know, that's one of my jobs, is to look globally at the entire range of challenges. We are always carefully considering our force posture around the world and then offering options to the Secretary and to the President. I won't comment on any future things, but the American people should know that we carefully consider those moves around the world and try to modulate as needed our force structure in the region.
Absolutely. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. What communications are being sent to the Iranians right now, and is there any possibility of diplomacy now or in the coming days?
I can only confirm that there are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table. They understand precisely what the American position is, precisely what steps they can take to allow for peace, and we hope they do so. Yes.
The president may not want an open-ended conflict. The Iranians may disagree. Are you prepared for a protracted war?
Well, anything can happen in conflict. We acknowledge that. But the scope of this was intentionally limited. That's the message that we're sending. With the capabilities of the American military, nearly unlimited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice. But we've made it very clear to them, this is nuclear sites, this is nuclear capabilities, this is the line that the president set, and we set that back. Now is the time to come forward for peace. But I think one of the takeaways from this as well is the unprecedented level of ongoing cooperation. I can't speak highly enough of the chairman and his staff and General Kurilla in CENTCOM, what they've done to look around the corner, to pre-position, to understand how an operation like this comes together. The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America and Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace. But I could not be more proud of how this building operated, of the precision, the sensitivity, and the professionalism of the troops involved in this effort. I will take one more. We'll take one more question. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests, reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. You have just been watching live coverage of the Pentagon press briefing with Pete Hegseth, Defence Secretary, and General Dan Kane, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force. That's live from the Pentagon, bringing us up to date on the US action overnight of bombing 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Okay, now to tell us more is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, thank you for joining us. Mark, obviously that was the live press briefing there. What do you make of what you've heard? Has it moved us any further?
Well, you heard that from Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary in the US, talking about the most incredible operation that involved very significant resources to carry out this audacious bombing attack inside Iran. Operation Midnight, this bombing raid was called. B-2 stealth bombers were used. They left from the United States, with some flying west across the Pacific as part of the deception process. No one, he said, knew really, except for a very few people within the administration, of what was unfolding. That was vital, the Defense Secretary said, in ensuring the success of this mission. Now, he said it was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. It wasn't intended and didn't target Iranian troops or indeed Iranian civilians. He said that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Trump's plan, a lot of superlatives used here to describe what his boss, President Trump, had put together in terms of this plan. He said President Trump's plan was bold and brilliant. When President Trump says 60 days, talking about the negotiations, of course, with the Iranians that were just bogged down by Iranian obfuscation and went absolutely nowhere, Pete Hegseth said that means 60 days or the program won't exist. He said that it was the longest B-2 mission since 2001, so in 24 years. A massive ordnance penetrator bombs were used. 14 of those were used during this mission. In fact, in total, 75 precision-guided munitions were used, including those 14 bunker buster bombs that were dropped on the Fordo nuclear site with the aim of penetrating deep into the mountainside. Now, according to Pete Hegseth, he said extremely severe damage was caused to all 3 sites with these bunker busting bombs. As far as the actual battle damage assessment is concerned, the Joint Chiefs said there that they're still to carry out that proper battle damage assessment. So, perhaps they're just getting a little ahead of themselves. But from what clearly they've been able to tell with their intelligence and satellite imagery, they believe that they have caused extremely severe damage to all 3 sites. Of course, the sites not just at Fordo, but at Natanz and also at Isfahan. So a really audacious, huge operation that required a lot of planning, and just incredible, really, that these bomber aircraft with their supporting tankers and combat aircraft got into Iran, got out safely, according to Pete Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane. He said that they were not engaged by any Iranian fighters, nor did the surface-to-air missile systems apparently spot them at all.
Great, thank you very much, Mark, for bringing us up to date on that. I'm joined in the studio now by Chair of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. Greg, you've just sat with me and listened to the press briefing from the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth and Dan Kane, General Dan Kane. What did you make of what they had to say?
It's really incredible, the way they described this mission, and it just demonstrates the capability of the United States military. It was both the Air Force and the Navy. And it demonstrates the strength and the idea that we can have peace through strength. You know, this is, as you know, President Trump's very much an anti-war president, but when it's necessary, he's not afraid to use.
That message came across throughout that press briefing, yeah. I found, the fact that, you know, we have done this, we are demonstrating our strength, you know, America, they said several times, America is the only country that can do this. That's a very strong warning in there to any other countries that
China
might be...
and Russia, absolutely. So it demonstrates our capability, but also demonstrates some moral clarity here, which we desperately needed. We don't get that enough from the West. You had the ridiculous comments from the UN after the mission was executed, and so I think bringing some moral clarity after months of this moral ambiguity that you get from many leaders in the West. It's pretty reassuring.
Now, as you mentioned earlier on, Donald Trump was elected on a promise to avoid foreign wars.
Yeah.
So there are some that would say, well, this sounds like a foreign war to us.
Yeah, because the alternative was to let the mullahs, let the regime have nuclear capabilities. So this, in many ways, is avoiding war. The best way to avoid war is prepare for war. And again, this is a great example of peace through strength. So, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when lines are crossed, there has to be a military response. He did it with Soleimani in early 2020. And, you know, all the critics are saying, oh, he's going to start World War III. He's escalating. No, this is not escalation. In many ways, this is self-defense on behalf of Israel. But it was really important for the president to give the mullahs an opportunity to do this diplomatically, to do it the peaceful way. And, you know, the 60-day deadline passed, and we just couldn't have another moment where red lines are crossed and there's no response. We saw it with President Obama and the red lines in Syria, and he backed away. So we've had appeasement from both the Obama and Biden administrations, and we see what happens with appeasement. We saw what the regime was able to do when they were basically financed by Obama and Biden and to fund their proxy wars. So this was a moment that really had to happen. I don't think there was any alternative.
You sound very proud of what Trump has done.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, our Republicans say you would be, but I mean...
Yeah, we're very proud, and we're also proud of these brave airmen and brave sailors.
That was another point that came across very much, so the people actually taking part.
Absolutely. And I mean, a shout out to my friend Steve Tittle, who's retiring from the Air Force next week. And it's men and women like that make such great sacrifices and take great risk. Imagine flying these B-2 bombers into Iranian airspace while 75 Tomahawk missiles are flying around from the submarines. So a really incredible execution.
Now, the one question that wasn't answered there, Greg, in that press conference was our retaliation. Now, we know Iran retaliated instantly, firing more rockets into Israel. So they do still have the capability to do that. But what does happen now? What comes next if Iran does retaliate against American targets?
And I'm not sure if they can possibly retaliate. You know, what could they possibly do unless it's just a suicide mission at this point? I mean, look what happened last night. I think that you know, we've demonstrated what we can do when we put our mind to it, and what Iran can expect if they retaliate. Now, if, obviously they've retaliated by firing missiles on Tel Aviv. That's not new. They've been doing that for a couple of years now. So 400 missiles fired just over the last 8 months, 300 in one night, if you recall. So,
yes.
They're not afraid to punch back, but I do think they would be making a grave mistake to attack any U.S. assets.
Okay, Greg, thank you very much indeed. That's Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas. Okay, now we go live to Tel Aviv and speak to Israeli journalist and Iran affairs expert Emily Schrader. Emily, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Emily, I don't know if you were listening to the press conference from the Pentagon just now. Can you bring us up to date what the mood is like in Israel at the moment?
Well, first and foremost, I think that all Israelis, from the government to your average citizen on the street, is eternally grateful for the efforts and the success of the United States Air Force in this effort against the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. Obviously, this has been of the utmost concern to the state of Israel for many years, and that has only increased over time. I mean, we saw that throughout these negotiations. Iran had advanced, or the Islamic Republic, I should say, advanced a secret nuclear site, an additional one. We saw that they had continued enriching uranium far above any civilian level. 60% uranium is 90% of the way to a nuclear weapon, and there is no civilian purpose for this level of enrichment. So we knew from the beginning that this is how the regime approaches negotiations. It's what they did in the past before the JCPOA. The difference now is that U.S. President Trump is not prepared to play that same game that we saw Obama play previously, and I think that's really a good thing, of course, for the state of Israel, but in fact for the entire Middle East that has been on the receiving end of missiles and all kinds of terror attacks throughout the Arab world as well, not just the state of Israel.
Emily, I mean, Iran did strike back straight away, and I understand there are 86 casualties overnight in Tel Aviv?
So we do have so far 86 injured, not killed. I should specify that. There was a barrage of rockets, about 30 ballistic missiles that were fired into Israeli cities. Here in my house, I heard a lot of booms. There were some direct hits in Tel Aviv, and I was actually at the site just a couple of hours ago after the rocket struck. Tremendous damage, yet somewhat miraculously, we actually saw no injuries at that site in Tel Aviv because the public was following the instructions of the Home Front Command. The shelters that people were inside that are fortified did protect people, even though we have seen pretty minor injuries, quite a few, but minor injuries. So all in all, we're prepared to deal with the threat. We've been prepared from day one because the risk is too high. And we are in the direct firing line of a potential nuclear attack from the Islamic Republic of Iran. They've stated it many times that's their goal. And that simply is something that we can't continue to risk as they continued to advance not only the nuclear program, but as we received intelligence about a organized plot with their terror proxies in order to eliminate, in their words, eliminate the entire state of Israel. This is just not a risk that we have the luxury of, taking with a grain of salt. We know what they've done in the past. We saw how they've financed and armed October 7th massacre, and we can't risk that.
Emily, on the whole, does Israel feel like a safer place for you this morning?
It's strange to say, but actually, yes. I think that a lot of Israelis would agree with me on that front. Yes, we are dealing with a significant threat from the Islamic regime, but we also know that for already a week, the Israeli Air Force essentially controls the skies of Iran. And we heard a similar sentiment from the, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who said that the groundwork that Israel had done, or I guess I should say air work that Israel had done throughout this week is really what helped enable the safe and secure passage of those U.S. Air Force to be able to carry out their mission targeting the nuclear site. And I just want to emphasize one more thing. It is not the goal of the state of Israel or the goal of the United States to force regime change on Iran. Israel's goals in the war, of course, are broader than the United States, which was focused selectively on the nuclear program. We are also focused on the IRGC and the regime efforts to expand terrorism and attack Israeli civilians. This is something that they've done for many years. So it's a little bit more broad than just the United States focus. But when it comes to regime change, this is something that really has to come to the people. The good thing about this is that we are weakening the regime to a point where the people can actually rise up. And I just want to say that when it comes to the Iranian people, they are desperate for regime change themselves. They've dealt with issues like this for many, many years of the Islamic Republic. And now the primary concern from the Iranian people that I'm speaking to on the ground isn't what Israel is going to do or what the United States is going to do. It's what the regime is going to do to them. Already we see checkpoints being set set up. We see people being executed, being falsely accused of being Mossad spies. There's all kinds of activity going on inside the ground against their own people, and it's not new. It's something that we've seen the regime do in the past. They shot down PS-752, the airliner filled with their own citizens on board. They've committed terror attacks and tried to blame others, like the Cinema Rex attack. So there is a lot of concern on the ground right now that the people who are going to pay the price for this are actually the Iranian people in being attacked by their own regime. So this is something the West needs to be aware of, pay attention to, and do everything we can to support these people in their pursuit of regime change. That being said, this isn't Iraq. We're not going to see boots on the ground, which is one of the reasons that the criticism from people like Antonio Gutierrez of the UN is a little bit ridiculous, as well as a few members of Congress, because the United States has not declared war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. They carried out a specific precision mission, and I don't think that's something that we should exaggerate when it comes to the discussion. It's not a political issue. It's not a partisan issue, and nobody should be framing it as such. This is in the interest of everyone, from left to right, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, throughout the Middle East, and in the Western world as well.
Emily, thank you very much for joining us. That's Emily Schrader, an Israeli journalist, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. OK, joining me now is Professor of International Politics, Scott Lucas, for more reaction on America's military attack on Iran. Scott, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Scott, I don't know if you were just listening to Emily there. Emily in Israel was saying that this isn't a declaration of war, this is a targeted attack. What do you make of what's happening so far?
It's probably important to bring in some facts, not just with Emily's impassioned comments, but also some statements from Greg Swenson and indeed the press conference from the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the U.S. military. The starting point, if you want to ask about what Israel is seeking, is that while they will not use the word specific regime change, they want to get rid of the Iranian leadership. The Israel Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said 2 days ago that Ayatollah Khamenei, the Iran supreme leader, should cease to exist. And Israel has asked the United States not only to come in with the bombing, which we've seen, they've asked the United States to support the targeted assassination of the supreme leader after the successful targeted assassinations of most of Iran's top commanders. So we need to be very clear-eyed about this, and that is that Israel wants to cause so much disruption in Iran that, in effect, the leadership will fall. I think we also need to be clear-eyed, and I appreciate Emily's impassioned speech, but I've got pretty extensive contacts in Iran, having worked there. And Iranians in the country, and almost all of my friends there, want reform of the regime. Some of them want the regime to be removed, and I understand that goal very much. They do not want it to come this way. They don't want it to come this way, first of all, because the Iranian civilians are also getting killed. They don't want it to come this way because it's just destroying the country, and it's going to take years to rebuild it. And they don't want it because the idea of changing your leadership from outside, which they saw in Iraq 2003, and which led to deadly consequences, could happen in Iran. Because if the leadership falls, as much as I dislike the leadership, you have the question of how you can fill that power vacuum. And you have to understand that any Iranian who has any association with Israel is going to be considered as someone who really shouldn't be a new leader in the country. Because Israel, not that my Iranian friends want to see the end of Israel, they accept it as a state, but Israel has been seen as an enemy for so long, which in the past 10 days has carried out a very deadly war against the Islamic Republic.
Do you think that what America has done is a declaration of war? Is that how you would define it?
It's not a formal declaration of war because they would have to get Congress to do that. But yes, this is an act of war. I mean, you have attacked nuclear facilities and you have attacked it without a legally established cause. And the reason, again, and this pushes back on what Greg Swenson's saying, is, first of all, there is no evidence that those nuclear facilities were pursuing a nuclear weapon. The International Atomic Energy Agency said last week that they are not currently producing a nuclear weapon. The U.S. intelligence services, led by Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, say Iran is not currently pursuing a nuclear weapon. So you don't have a cause there. Secondly, these are facilities which are part of an international system called the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, overseen by the International Atomic Energy Agency. If there are issues over these facilities, then it's the IAEA should be established. And perhaps most importantly, it's not Iran that walked away from the negotiations. That's a misrepresentation by Pete Hegseth. Iran was negotiating all the way up to the point that Israel attacked. It's actually the U.S. that walked out of the negotiations.
Scott, we have to finish it there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. That's Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. OK, now, back in the UK, demonstrators carried Iranian and Palestinian flags through the streets of the capital with placards in support of Iran's supreme leader. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel says this cannot be tolerated.
I actually do feel very strongly about this, and having been a former Home Secretary and seen too many files on Iran and seen the implications for our country, it is right that the agencies look at everyone that are involved in these, not just protests, but those that are carrying the Iranian placards, you know, the propaganda, basically, defending the actions of Iran, to ensure that they're not on any watch list or a threat to our country. Because, as I've said, we've seen what happened in Brize Norton. We saw what happened in Cyprus at our military base yesterday. And we had people arrested. Iranian proxies were arrested over 8 weeks ago. They now go through criminal proceedings under the Terrorism Act that the last Conservative government brought into place, because we've known for many years, which is why we brought those new legislations in, that Iran is a state threat to this country.
OK, so let's bring this back, you know, closer to home, as Dame Priti was there. So let's speak to Executive Director, Henry Jackson Society, Dr Alan Mendoza. Alan, thank you so much for coming in. Alan, we saw the protests in London yesterday. Lots of people just concerned about dropping bombs on people, which no one thinks is a good idea, obviously. However, there were placards there being carried, quite clearly supporting the Ayatollah and the regime in Iran. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, obviously there are people who are just anti-war, right? That's a stance. It's a moral stance. Fine, we can argue about it. What we can't argue with the people who are indeed extolling the virtues of one of the most evil regimes in the world, and one which has directed terror attacks on British soil. So and against British soldiers in the past, how these people are allowed to carry these things and we're not keeping a close watch is beyond me, frankly.
What do you think we should do?
Well, I think what Priti Patel was saying earlier is the best start. You start with understanding, well, who are these people who are actually carrying the placards? Who's organising the carrying of the placards? Which groups are behind this? Who are they in connection with? Might they be part of Iran's actual system of disruption overseas? If they are, we need to be taking firm action at a time of increased crisis and making sure that any threats to national security are taken care of by the security services.
Well, this is, I mean, obviously we saw the Brize Norton break-in where the planes were vandalised. Would you describe that as an act of terrorism?
Absolutely, because you've seen people break in to military installation and, OK, they threw paint over the planes. Well, next time, who's to say that they won't actually damage the planes? I mean, there's been a history, if you look at the last 18 months, 2 years, of increased radicalisation on the part of these protesters and what they're prepared to do. It doesn't take a genius to work out that we are on the continuum towards full-scale terrorist attacks against British forces.
I mean, we're talking a lot about Iran's response and a military response, but is there more danger, certainly for the UK, do you think, of it being more a cyber warfare, maybe sleeper cells already embedded in this country actually being activated now?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? So for decades now, we've known about Iranian influence in the UK. We've known about insertion of people here from the regime who have operated even British charities at various points. And examples have been, seen for all to understand. And we've done very little about it. So, yes, there is a concern that there is a sleeper cell movement here, not even operating that sleeper, to be honest. It's fairly open. We know the centres of influence and we know how far they've spread. And indeed, there could be cyber attacks, but that is not a reason, of course, to be concerned about the fate of this regime. This regime has its future in its own hands. It can step back from that outcome right now by agreeing to give up its nuclear programme.
So I mean, obviously there is a right to protest, which we have in this country completely. Palestine Action would say they are a protest movement. Would you say more that they are a terrorist movement? Pretty much comparable to Hamas, which is what they've been compared to.
Well, they're a different kind of terrorist movement to Hamas, of course. However, they do, again, fall on, in my view, the broad scope of terrorism. They are seeking to influence the course of action in this country, not through democratic means, but by extra-democratic means. And those means are getting more and more radical as they go along. So I would favour a prescription of them, because they clearly have shown they are now breaking into British bases, and that is just a security situation that can't be tolerated. They've gone beyond the realms of mere protest. Done that for a while, actually, and it's about time we took action, because if you don't take action, the lesson is they will continue.
And just very quickly, why do you think we let people walk through the streets carrying placards like that?
Well, one of it is protest, fine, but I think this...
But the regime is a direct threat to the UK.
Agreed, but of course it isn't yet a terrorist threat. Now, what should have happened months and years ago was a prescription of the IRGC. Had we done that, then this would be a very different case in point. We could have arrested those people straight away. So this shows you how foolish it was for the previous government and this government not to act against Iran's terrorist infrastructure. It stops us from taking quick action.
Alan, thank you very much for joining us. Alan Mendoza there. Right, okay, there's loads more coming up on today's show, bringing you full live updates on the breaking news story. Please don't go anywhere, you don't want to miss anything. But all of that after this very quick break for your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Sunshine and showers is the name of the game over the next few days, all because an area of low pressure is sat just to the north of the UK. Some tightly spaced isobars mean there's quite a brisk breeze around, and it's these weather fronts that are really driving in those showers. They have the potential to be heavy at times, also thundery in places as well. They're moving in on that brisk breeze, which is also heralding in some fresher conditions. And so we're losing the humidity that we've had around recently. So tonight should be much more comfortable for sleeping for everyone. Temperatures generally around 10 to 16 degrees Celsius. A few of those showers will just be lingering across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but they will eventually clear their way off. And generally for the southern half of England into Wales, tomorrow starts on a nice fine note, lots of bright sunny conditions around. We will always have those showers though across parts of the north and the west. To begin with, some of those could still be on the heavy side with some longer spells of rain for Caithness, Sutherland and the Northern Isles also. Stronger winds here as well, perhaps close to gale strength for a time. The showers will continue in the north and west, but generally turn a little lighter as we head throughout the day. But if you're to the east of higher ground, so parts of County Antrim, County Down, but also eastern Scotland, eastern England, and more broadly across the southern half of the UK, it should be a relatively fine day overall with some decent sunny spells in there. It's still going to be blustery though, and you will notice that wind if you are outside, making it feel on the slightly cooler theme of things, generally temperatures between 15 and 24 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, the cloud will start to build from the west, perhaps some longer spells of rain arriving for Northern Ireland later on in the day. This heralds in another very changeable theme as we head throughout the rest of the week. So further showers, longer spells of rain are still possible, at times even more thunderstorms in places. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed home battery storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Chu from Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 22nd of June. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. This is The Weekend on GB News.
President speaks, the world should listen.
The United States of America say they have carried out incredible and overwhelmingly successful strikes on Iran's nuclear capabilities.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody.
Donald Trump says Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities have been obliterated after U.S. stealth jets launched a daring bombing raid overnight, bringing America directly into Israel's war against Iran. And Sir Keir Starmer appears to support the strike, saying Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. As tensions skyrocket, will the UK be dragged into a new Middle East conflict?
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat.
I'm Dawn Newsom, and this is The Weekend. So thank you very much for joining me this Sunday afternoon. Really appreciate your company. It is a slightly different show than we normally do, but it is a huge news breaking story. Now, I understand that many of you have been worried this morning and woken up concerned about the situation with America bombing Iran. So we are here for you. We are here to share your thoughts, share your views and talk to you. So if there's anything you want to discuss, it's very easy to get involved. Simply visit gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. And said, we are here for you all day today. So please get involved in our conversation. But before we get stuck into our second hour, let's get the news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 2:02. No other military in the world could have done this. That's the stance of top US military general, who is warning Iran that any retaliation on the US would be a poor choice. After weeks of preparation, US officials say the mission, which has been codenamed Midnight Hammer, obliterated Iran's nuclear ambitions but did not target any Iranian troops or civilians. They confirmed 3 key sites, Natanz, Isfahan and Fordow, sustained extremely severe damage. More than 125 military aircraft took part in the offensive, which has been described as the largest B-2 operational strike in US history. Vice President Vance has said the US is not at war with Iran, but is at war with its nuclear program. In a press briefing at the Pentagon in the last hour, US Air Force General Dan Kane said the safety of the US is their top priority.
Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority.
Iranian officials have hit back, calling the attacks outrageous and warned they would have everlasting consequences. The country immediately retaliated on Israel with what is reported to be its most significant attack on the country since the conflict started last week. Explosions have hit Tel Aviv, Jerusalem and Haifa, with at least 16 people known to be injured. The British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has recognised the risk of escalation in the Middle East and beyond and is urging Iran to negotiate with the US.
It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation and to get to a negotiated outcome. But I'm very clear in my own mind that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That is the greatest threat to stability in the region.
British citizens and their dependents are set to be evacuated from Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories as early as next week. The government is urging those who want to leave to make contact with the Foreign Office as soon as possible. The Israeli government says around 22,000 tourists are seeking to be evacuated, but it's unclear how many of those are UK citizens. You're up to date. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Bethany. Now, the United States say they carried out an incredible and overwhelmingly successful strike on Iran, the scale of which is incomparable.
The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America and Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace.
President Trump is calling it a spectacular military success. In a late-night address, the president declared Iran's key nuclear sites completely and totally obliterated, warning Tehran to make peace or face far greater tragedy.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the strikes as a bold decision that will change history, praising what he called unprecedented cooperation between Israel and American forces.
Tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and the US has taken action to alleviate that threat, and that it's time for Iran to return to the negotiating table.
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome. But I'm very clear in my own mind that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That is the greatest threat to stability in the region.
Meanwhile, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, has also said Reform UK stands behind the military actions of the USA overnight. Iran must not be allowed to have nuclear weapons. The future of Israel depends on it. In response to the strikes, the Iranian foreign minister described Trump's government as a warmongering, lawless administration.
The Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest terms the United States' brutal military aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
OK, joining us now is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White, who has a breaking line on this very fast-moving story. Mark, tell us more.
Yeah, it's a breaking line which might really point to where the next phase of potential escalation lies in this conflict. The Iranian parliament has just approved a plan to close the Strait of Hormuz. That is the narrow point within the Persian Gulf there, where, of course, so much of the world's oil and liquefied gas passes through on those oil tankers in that area. Nothing has happened thus far in that area, perhaps surprising to many, but Iran's parliament has now just approved that plan to close off the Strait of Hormuz, subject to final approval from the security apparatus within the Iranian regime. Now, if they do that, it will be a very, very serious development for the world, because it will clearly disrupt oil supplies, vital oil and gas supplies through that vital strait, and mean that we will see a very significant steep rise in those oil and gas prices. But of course, as well, you have potentially shipping in the area that might well be targeted. Over the years, Iran has been building up its arsenal, effectively, of fast attack boats, frigates, mini submarines, all with a purpose in mind, and the purpose is, if called upon, to go out and cause absolute chaos in the Persian Gulf. Now, of course, there are US and other Western nations maritime assets in that region. The UK has a small Royal Naval presence there as well. But there's no doubt, if so minded, Iran could cause very significant problems in that area. And this morning already, they have responded to what has happened overnight with those B-2 and associated aircraft striking the 3 nuclear plants in Iran, with very significant ballistic missile strikes on Israel. 2 waves of ballistic missile strikes in quick succession that caused absolute devastation to some parts of Tel Aviv, residential areas, where you can see from these overhead drone shots that buildings have just been ripped apart. Blocks of flats where the facade has been ripped off as well, rubble brought down in huge mounds, and there's a big search and rescue effort underway now, looking through the rubble, trying to determine whether there are any other people that might be trapped underneath the rubble. We know that more than 20 people have been injured so far, and what's worrying, I think, for the Israeli population is just in recent days it seems an increasing number, even though the number of ballistic missiles launched from Iran hasn't been as high as it was at the start of this conflict 10 days ago. It seems they have been able to get increasing numbers of their ballistic missiles through that layered missile defense system that Israel has.
I just wonder, Mark, if you're still there, I just want to ask you one question. I mean, closing the Strait of Hormuz is a nuclear, literally a nuclear option, isn't it? Because China, which is the largest buyer of Iranian oil, uses that strait for its purposes. So this really does escalate the situation.
Well, there's absolutely no doubt. But, you know, when you've got a nation with its backs back against the wall, and this is, remember, a revolutionary nation founded on those revolutionary principles. They are no strangers to conflict throughout the entirety of the Islamic regime. So it's certainly, although a nuclear option, a possible option. It wouldn't just affect China. Iran, of course, with its Black Fleet runs some of those Black Fleet tankers through that area as well. And they lay themselves open to their own port and oil infrastructure facilities that Iran has in that area being targeted specifically by the US, potentially, certainly by Israel.
OK, Mark, thank you very much. That is GB News Homeland Security Editor Mark White with that late-breaking line about the Strait of Hormuz potentially being closed by Iran, which really does escalate the situation globally because it affects oil prices globally, and that is what pretty much everyone really cares about. For more reaction, I'm joined in the studio now by Chair of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson, and International Human Rights Lawyer Sarah Elizabeth Dill. Thank you very much for joining me, both of you. Greg, coming to you first. Mark just reporting on that latest potential escalation with the Strait of Hormuz being voted for to being closed down. That really does escalate the situation. Now, we know America has one of its biggest aircraft carriers in that region. Right. So where does this leave things?
Yeah, I think it would be a huge mistake if the regime actually went ahead with that. This brings me back to Reagan in the 80s. He took out the entire Iranian Navy when they were making similar kind of threats. And so that's something that the U.S. Navy and with the help of our allies could easily handle any sort of Iranian effort at closing the strait. And we saw this with the Houthis when they were disrupting shipping lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not the first time we've seen that. Oil prices are only up 0.75% on the news. They might open higher tomorrow, but I don't think this is, it's unwise for the regime to do this for sure, but I don't think it's a legitimate threat when they are completely overwhelmed in terms of naval assets in the region.
It doesn't sound like Tehran at the moment they are taking heed of what Trump has said, and indeed what the Pentagon press conference said this morning, that this is a warning. Only America can do this. It doesn't sound like Iran are listening. I mean, we know that the Iranian foreign minister is heading to Moscow to meet Putin.
Sure.
There's already now talk of the Strait of Hormuz being closed down. It doesn't sound like Iran are listening.
You're right, and it's just bluster coming from Iran at this point, but it just proves that they're lunatics as well. So, this again, it would be very unwise for them to escalate and make that kind of really poor decision.
Now, obviously, in any military conflict, the most important thing is to have an exit strategy. That's what everybody will tell you. What is America's exit strategy if Iran don't go to the negotiating table?
Well, the good news is they're going to be, if they do escalate, they're doing it without the capability of having nuclear assets. And so that's been removed. And that was a legitimate threat. I think that was something that was making people very uneasy in the region. I think the Arab states around Iran are going to be thrilled that they don't have that capability. So, it's impossible to predict what happens next. But I can assure you the best outcome or the best exit strategy was removing the nuclear threat, and that's been done.
OK. Sarah, let's bring you into the situation, because there is lots of arguments, obviously there's lots of arguments on both sides, about the legality of what we have seen happen overnight. Now, obviously, I'm clearly not a lawyer. I tried to get my head around where we are with this situation. Could you, in baby steps, talk me through what is legal, what isn't? Is America's actions legal?
So if we look under international law, absolutely not. 2 subs 4 of the UN Charter on Use of Force is very, very clear. And the imminency requirement, and Hegseth this afternoon referenced collective self-defense. We were all kind of wondering what he was going to assert as the US's justification. But even, I believe there were 1 or 2 senators who went to Twitter this morning, or X, and said that they were on the security briefing this week, and there was no new intel that showed that Iran was that close to raise to the level of threshold for imminency that would justify an act of aggression in this. And so from that standpoint, for the US to engage in those attacks, additionally, because they struck nuclear facilities, and the OSINT that I was reviewing just before I came in showed that the damage was not what we would have expected from the use of the bunker busters, and that obviously they said that Iran had notice of the strikes, and so they pulled all their personnel out. That's why there were no deaths or injuries. But most who've been looking at it already have said that they feel that these facilities are still intact. And so there is the potential that they could resume enrichment. Obviously, they are quite far away from having enough to the level of the 90% enrichment necessary for nuclear weapons. I mean, we're months from that. So under international law, what the U.S. did was illegal. It also was without international support. When you had every other country condemning what Israel did last Friday, condemning what they did, you have the Gulf states telling the U.S., absolutely, you may not use us to launch these strikes, both for their own domestic risks of retaliation, but also because they did not support. They all came out swiftly this morning condemning it. And I think that's something to pay attention to, that when you have across both sides of whether pro-Iran or middle ground or against Iran condemning this, I think that says a lot, too, as to what the world views about international law.
So if it is illegal, what happens?
This is the tragic, sad part that we have with international law. The UN obviously does not have an enforcement mechanism. They can impose sanctions. Those have proved ineffective in a multitude of conflicts. When Russia bombed the nuclear facilities in Ukraine, obviously the world condemned it, but nothing was done. And so other than diplomatic repercussions, countries pressuring the US to scale back, we hear these mixed, it's a limited strike, but then we're going to use all arsenal, we're going to proceed on this. And even Hegseth didn't seem to have a good answer as to whether or not the US had an exit strategy or if they were prepared for an ongoing war. And so I think it's really going to depend on the pressure from the international community to get the US to back down, to get Israel to stop bombing, and to get people back to the negotiating table.
And just very briefly, Sarah, what can Iran do legally in response?
So they invoked the right of self-defense against Israel last week. And in their letter to the UN Secretary General this morning and calling for an emergency meeting of the Security Council, they did call this an act of aggression by the US. They did not specifically invoke the right to self-defense, but the language in the letter seemed to indicate that they felt that they could now target whether it's US forces in Iraq, US military bases throughout the Gulf, which I don't think they would do just because of the repercussions of that, but any other US interests around the world in self-defense.
OK, Sarah, thank you very much. That is human rights lawyer Sarah Elizabeth Dill and Republicans Overseas Greg Swenson. Thank you both very much for joining me on this very fast-breaking story. I'm Dawn Neeson and this is GB News. We will be bringing you the very latest on US strikes on Iran, so please stay tuned. You don't want to go anywhere. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
And Tom, look what I received this morning.
This is so sweet. Oh!
Isn't that cute? From one of our viewers and listeners. A little, I think it's homemade.
Shall I hold it up?
Yeah, you hold it up. And a little tiny matching hat as well, which is very cute. Goes up here. So there you go, a little matching hat.
And
also a lovely little blanket as well. Wow. This is from Judith from Leeds, who wrote me a lovely little letter, and to Patrick as well, wishing us well, saying that she loves watching our shows, and I hope we enjoy this little outfit. So there you go.
It's like your little baby is with us already.
So yes, Judith, I hope you're watching, because thank you very much indeed. It's really sweet of you to send that to me. It took a little while to get to us, but we've got it this morning, so that's so cute.
It's incredible craftsmanship, actually.
I'll make sure to take a little picture when the baby arrives.
Are you sure your baby isn't going to be French?
It's something French about it. It's a good thing I like France, so there you go.
Oui, oui.
That's very cute indeed. I just thought I'd say thank you, because it was a really nice surprise this morning.
Yeah, no, it is actually really, really lovely. It does, I mean...
To bring a tear to your eye, Tom.
Well, we haven't really...
Feeling very emotional.
I was going to say...
New life.
We haven't really mentioned, your pregnancy in a little while. And
yeah, after the big reveal. After the big reveal.
You're still with us for a few months more before your due date.
I have to depart, yes. Yeah. Don't worry, you've got me for a little longer. We'll see how it goes.
Marvellous
See how
stuff.
it goes. It'll be rolling me in. Before I leave this desk.
It'll be a GB baby.
GB News baby. GB baby.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company this Sunday afternoon. Obviously, huge live breaking story, but we do want to talk to you about how you're feeling, what you're thinking. And remember, we are here for you all day covering this story. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved. Now, following those American airstrikes on nuclear facilities in Iran, US President Donald Trump has warned Tehran to make peace or face consequences of far greater attacks in the future. For its part, Iran has claimed the United States will face everlasting consequences for its decision to take military action, adding any attempt to target the country's supreme leader would spark an unlimited response. OK, let's get more reaction from Israel now and speak to former editor-in-chief of Jerusalem Post, Yaakov Katz. Yaakov, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Obviously, huge story, changing literally on a minute-by-minute basis. Just how are things at the moment where you are?
Well, Israel is, facing some anxiety. There were missile sirens and attacks that took place all across the country earlier this morning in the hours just after the U.S. had wrapped up its bombings of the nuclear facilities in Iran. Dozens of Israelis were injured in missiles that slammed into towns and cities in the center of the country. And the expectation is that more of this is still to come. The rules of the Home Front Command, which is in charge of civil defense, have been reinforced and were made a little stricter today, Dawn. So people should stay close to their homes, to their safe rooms, to their bomb shelters. Schools are still canceled. Businesses are still closed. So there is still some trepidation of what lies ahead in the future.
Feel safer this morning, though, or do you think the world is it's slightly more unstable?
Well, if you're asking me, I think the world is definitely a safer place today. Iran, which has long been the greatest destabilizer of the world, the greatest state sponsor of terrorism, in contrast to what your earlier panel was talking about, of how this was a violation of international law, there was no reason for America to have attacked Iran. Let's just remember that Iran was responsible for the deaths and murder of over 1,000 American servicemen in Iraq during that war by providing militias there and fighters there with IEDs. It was behind the Marine barracks bombings in Beirut in 1983, the Kober Tower bombings in Saudi Arabia in the 90s, and a series of other attacks against America. When they would chant death to Israel, they chanted with the same breath, death to America, and their violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the enrichment of uranium to 60% and higher for only one purpose, a military device and a nuclear weapon. So the removal of this threat from the table makes the world a safer place and creates greater opportunity for the Middle East in its entirety, for Israeli-Saudi normalization, for greater ties between countries that today do not have ties with the State of Israel. So I definitely look to the future, and I'm much more optimistic of what's possible.
I mean, we heard from the press conference with Pete Hegseth this morning, saying, it was bold, it was brilliant, only America could do this, talking very tough talk. But it doesn't appear that Iran are taking much notice. We know that the Iranian foreign minister is heading to Moscow to meet Putin. The Iranian government have voted to close the Straits of Hormuz. And indeed, they have fired rockets at Israel overnight with, I believe, 86 wounded. It doesn't sound like that Iran are backing down anytime soon. How do you feel about this escalating to affect Israel even more?
Well, that's definitely a possibility, Dawn, and it's one that Israel is definitely taking into consideration. But I would not believe the bluster of the Iranians right now. They are definitely hurting, and they're hurting for a number of reasons. Number one, their nuclear facilities, the ones that were hardened, were dug deep inside a mountain like Fordow, like Natanz, have now been damaged probably beyond repair. They could easily potentially rebuild one day, but that will take a long time for them to be able to do that. And what America has done with its B-2 bombers and those GBU-57s, the massive ordnance penetrator, is far greater damage than what Israel was able to do alone. But in addition to that, they also know something else today, and that is that if they decide to retaliate, to attack U.S. targets, to bomb American allies in the region, the Saudis, the Emiratis, and others, they potentially will face a even swifter and stronger retaliation from America. It was one thing all these years to hear from different presidents since the time of Bill Clinton, who have long said we will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. But it's another thing when a president puts the bombs, so-called, where his mouth is. And that's what Donald Trump did. And therefore, if you are the Ayatollah and you are Ali Khamenei and you thought that this was just a battle against Israel, well, now you know that this is also a battle against the strongest and most powerful country in the world, and that will have to give you pause.
Yakov Katz, thank you very much. That's Yakov Katz, former editor-in-chief of Jerusalem Post. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's plenty more coming up on today's show with all that breaking news on that story. But first, let's get those latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Here are the latest headlines from the GB newsroom. No other military in the world could have done this. That's the view of top US military general who is warning Iran that any retaliation on the US would be a poor choice. After weeks of preparation, US officials say the mission, which has been codenamed Midnight Hammer, obliterated Iran's nuclear ambitions but did not target any troops or civilians. They confirmed 3 key sites, Natanz, Isfahan and Fordow, sustained extremely severe damage. More than 125 military aircraft took part in the offensive, which has been described as the largest B-2 operational strike in US history. Vice President Vance has said the US is not at war with Iran, but it is at war with its nuclear program. In a press briefing at the Pentagon, US Air Force General Dan Kane said the safety of the US is their top priority.
Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority.
Iranian officials have hit back, calling the attacks outrageous and warned they would have everlasting consequences. The country immediately retaliated with what is reported to be its most significant attacks against Israel since the conflict started last week. Explosions have been heard in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem and Haifa, with at least 16 people known to be injured. The British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has recognised the risk of escalation in the Middle East and beyond and is urging Iran to negotiate with the US.
It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome. But I'm very clear in my own mind that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That is the greatest threat to stability in the region.
You're up to date. I'll bring you the latest in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Bethany, and thank you so much for your company this afternoon. I really appreciate it's a busy weekend for everybody out there, but we are covering a huge breaking story for you today, and we are bringing you up to date with each and every moment as it happens, so you don't want to move anywhere. Now, for those of you who are worried or are scared, we are also here for you all day as well. You can talk to us. It's very easy to get involved. Share your concerns. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? gbnews.com/your-say and join in that conversation. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is indeed GB News. We'll be bringing you the very latest on the US strikes on Iran, so stay tuned. We'll see you very soon. Don't go too far.
Hello there, this is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. We may now officially be into astronomical summer, but it is turning fresher for many of us as we see some heavy showers push in on a brisk breeze, all associated with this area of low pressure. Tightly spaced isobars means those winds are going to be quite blustery around today, and those weather fronts are starting to push in those showers from the west. They have the potential to be quite heavy at times with some rumbles of thunder, particularly across northern and western areas of the UK. And if you are in that breeze, you'll certainly notice the fresher, almost cooler feel to things compared to the recent heat wave. Across northern areas of Scotland, we'll be around the mid-teens in terms of our Celsius mark, more around 20 degrees across the far east where we see a touch of shelter. Again, for parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England, around the high teens here as those showers continue to push their way through. There will be some sunshine in between, but despite the best of the sunshine across the southeast first thing this morning, the cloud will be building as we head into the afternoon, but still highs of 27, 28 degrees Celsius here where we hold on to some of that heat. The showers continuing to spread their way through during this evening and into the forthcoming night, so there is the chance that most places see a touch of rainfall during that 12-hour period or so. The brisk breeze, though, continues pushing those fresher conditions across all areas of the UK, so tonight will be less muggy and more comfortable for sleeping right across the board. Tomorrow is another day of sunshine and showers. Those showers generally always more frequent up towards the north and the west, perhaps some longer spells of rain for the Northern Isles with close to gale strength gusts for a time. Generally, if you're to the east of higher grounds and more broadly across the south, you've got the greater chance of seeing some more prolonged sunshine in there. Still breezy though, but temperatures around 18 to 24 degrees Celsius. Into the rest of next week, it is looking fairly changeable. There will be further showers, potential for thunderstorms at times, but temperatures generally around average for the time of year.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you so much for your company this Sunday afternoon. Now, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and the US has taken action to alleviate that threat, and that it's time for Iran to return to the negotiating table.
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome. But I'm very clear in my own mind that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That is the greatest threat to stability in the region.
As tensions skyrocket, will the UK be dragged into a new Middle East conflict? I'm glad to say I'm joined by an expert, former Army officer Henry Bolton. Henry, thank you so much for coming in to discuss this. Obviously, incredible breaking situation. What do you make of what has happened so far and where we are now, and what does it mean for the UK?
I think before talking about what it means for the UK, perhaps sort of put it in a little context and address some other things, because that feeds into what it means for the UK. I mean, this is not... It's breaking news, the bombing last night by the Americans, but it's been a long, long time coming. Since 1979, the Islamic Republic has referred to America as the Great Satan, has repeatedly stated its intention to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. So that intent is very well established. What Iran has lacked is the means to carry out, to deliver that intent. Well, it now looks as though that they were very, very close to getting 60% enrichment of uranium at one of these plants, the Fordow plant, which really made the threat, intent plus means, an extant threat to Israel. We've been trying to avoid this for years, decades. There have been agreements, negotiations with the Iranians to try and head this off and steer their nuclear program in the direction of a peaceful program. But for those who are saying, well, maybe they did want it to be peaceful, to power a nuclear power station, you only need 3.5% to 5% enrichment. The Iranians, by their own admission, this plant was designed and built to enrich to 60%. You only need that if you're going down the weapons route.
The weapons route, right.
So there was a very clear investment by Iran in the military side of nuclear weapons. Would they have the intent? Well, I can only point then at their repeated, consistent, persistent statements to the effect that they would wipe Israel from the face of the earth. So you combine those two things. Do we want to wait until they actually do it before responding, or preempt it? And Israel, in that case, wanted to preempt it, started to preempt it, couldn't defeat that facility at Fordow, and so the Americans went in and did it. That's where it stands now. The Americans have made it very clear that they will not conduct any more preemptive strikes. They will only respond if Iran makes the very, very unwise decision to respond themselves or through their proxies. Hezbollah, the Houthis down in the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula, or even the numerous Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. And there are a lot of American and allied bases around that region that are potential targets. We've just heard that the Iranian parliament has voted to close the Straits of Hormuz.
Yes.
Now, that means international shipping would be blocked through there. Now, this would be an incredibly unwise decision by the Iranians, by our standards, because we think of it from our sort of political pragmatism, life and death, this sort of thing. But we've got to remember that Iran is not a democracy.
No.
Iran is a theocracy, and government decisions and decisions of this sort are made not on political pragmatism or democratic will or moral principles. They are made according to their interpretation of Islamic law. Now, that puts the response scenario in a very different context. Don't think common sense, don't think political pragmatism, don't think economy. Think about a hardcore Islamic state saying this is the arch Satan of the world and we cannot bow down to them. So we've got that problem. It does pull in the United Kingdom at that point because the UK runs something called the UK Maritime Trade Organisation. It's actually an operational centre in the Gulf or in the Red Sea that basically monitors all the threats and gives warnings to shipping. And we also provide some naval reaction to assist shipping if it gets into trouble. So there are all sorts of things. Back home, we know that Iranians have been involved in terror plots in the UK.
We had the recent arrests. Yeah.
Correct. And we've had a recent case in Cyprus, which wasn't actually revealed by the UK media or the government, but by Israeli media.
Yes, we didn't cover it over here, did we?
No. I think I think looking at the Prime Minister, he looks scared. He is he's a bureaucrat. He's an administrator. He is out of his depth on this, and I think that doesn't help us either. I think there is a threat here, but that goes into a broader thing. How have we allowed that threat to establish itself in the United Kingdom? And that talks to mass immigration and a variety of things. So that's kind of where we are, I think. The breaking news on the Iranian parliament voting to close the Straits of Hormuz. If, in fact, they do that, then Central Command of the United States has over 200 military aircraft, combat aircraft, ready to launch, and I think it would be massive.
Do you have, just very, very quickly, we are running out of time, Henry, sorry. And do you have any faith in Keir Starmer and David Lammy to look after the UK's interests in this situation?
No, I don't, and there's one very clear indicator as to why not. The last thing you do when faced with the threat of terrorism is appease it. That is precisely what he did. He asked President Bush not to attack Iran because there is a threat from terrorist sleeper cells, Iranian terrorist sleeper cells, in the United Kingdom and Europe. And that allows terrorists to influence your foreign policy and decision-making. That is weakness. That is not leadership.
Strong words indeed. Henry, thank you so much. That's former Army officer Henry Bolton there. Thank you, Henry. I'm Dawn Newsom, GB News. We're bringing you the very latest on the US strikes in Iran. Stay tuned. You don't want to get anywhere at all. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Newsom. Thank you so much for your company. Now, following American airstrikes on nuclear facilities in Iran, US President Donald Trump has warned Tehran to make peace or face far greater attacks in future. For its part, Iran has claimed the United States will face everlasting consequences for its decision to take military action, adding any attempt to target the country's supreme leader would spark an unlimited response. For the Americans' perspective on Donald Trump's decision to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, let's speak to Republican commentator Steve Gill. Steve, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Obviously, very strong words we heard from the Pentagon today. It was big, it was bold. Only America can do this. What do you make of your president's actions?
I think it was something that had to take place, mainly because nobody in the world thinks that Iran having nuclear weapons would be better for the world. And that's one of the reasons that you're not seeing anybody really aligned with Iran in the wake of these strikes, except for the usual suspects, North Korea and the Democrats in the United States. So most of the world is going to sit back, let this strike happen, and then hope that diplomatic resolve brings us back to a level of peace. Because, again, nobody thinks it's good for the world if Iran has nukes, because Iran will use them.
Steve, I mean, Trump came to the presidency in a message of peace, no foreign wars. This, to many of us, feels like a foreign war.
Well, I don't think it's going to erupt into a war. I think this military strike is to do exactly what it is intended to do, which is take out their nuclear development, weapon development. And I don't think there's anybody other than, again, some of the hysterics in the media and on the left here in the U.S. who are proclaiming that this is a war. Trump has made it clear he's not pushing regime change. It may or may not happen. He's also made it clear he has no intentions of putting boots on the ground, troops on the ground in Iran, trying to get into a ground war, as we've seen previous presidents do in these disastrous, endless wars. So I think President Trump is clear. This is to stop the nuclear ambitions of Iran, at least temporarily, if not for the longer term, and then allow diplomatic resolve to kind of move into its place. And again, he gave 60 days. After 60 days, they would not come to the table with any serious intent to stop their nuclear weapons development. He gave another 2 weeks, and when they declared a couple of days ago that they had no intentions of surrendering their ambitions for nuclear weapons, he said he would take action when the talks stopped. The talks stopped, and the U.S. took action.
Just quickly, we are running out of time. If Iran doesn't take any notice and carry on fighting, what do you do next?
Well, I think if they're talking, as your breaking news indicates, of stopping and blocking the Straits of Hormuz, I think you will see military action to take out their gunboats and to keep that open. But I still don't think that means that there's going to be some sort of an assault on Iran, like we saw in Iraq, like we've seen in other countries in the past.
Steve, thank you very much. That's the Republican commentator, Steve Gill. Well, thank you very much for your company. I've been Dawn Neeson, GB News. Don't go too far, because Nana is up next and she will have all the latest lines on this breaking story for you. Thank you for your company. Take care out there.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your latest GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Sunshine and showers is the name of the game over the next few days, all because an area of low pressure is sat just to the north of the UK. Some tightly spaced isobars mean there's quite a brisk breeze around, and it's these weather fronts that are really driving in those showers. They have the potential to be heavy at times, also thundery in places as well. They're moving in on that brisk breeze, which is also heralding in some fresher conditions. And so we're losing the humidity that we've had around recently. So tonight should be much more comfortable for sleeping for everyone. Temperatures generally around 10 to 16 degrees Celsius. A few of those showers will just be lingering across the far southeast first thing tomorrow morning, but they will eventually clear their way off. And generally for the southern half of England into Wales, tomorrow starts on a nice fine note, lots of bright sunny conditions around. We will always have those showers though across parts of the north and the west. To begin with, some of those could still be on the heavy side, with some longer spells of rain for Caithness, Sutherland and the Northern Isles also. Stronger winds here as well, perhaps close to gale strength for a time. The showers will continue in the north and west, but generally turn a little lighter as we head throughout the day. But if you're to the east of higher ground, so parts of County Antrim, County Down, but also eastern Scotland, eastern England, and more broadly across the southern half of the UK, it should be a relatively fine day overall, with some decent sunny spells in there. It's still going to be blustery though, and you will notice that wind if you are outside, making it feel on the slightly cooler theme of things, generally temperatures between 15 and 24 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, the cloud will start to build from the west, perhaps some longer spells of rain arriving for Northern Ireland later on in the day. This heralds in another very changeable theme as we head throughout the rest of the week. So further showers, longer spells of rain are still possible, at times even more thunderstorms in places. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we're in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Acquare. Now,
cannot have a nuclear weapon. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region and get the parties back around the table to negotiate.
So Keir Starmer says stability in the Middle East is a priority after the US bombs Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, despite the Prime Minister's pleading to de-escalate the situation, will the UK be dragged into a new Middle East conflict? Business and Trade Minister Jonathan Reynolds backs the strikes.
Absolutely clear that Iran having a nuclear weapon would be a threat to international security, and there's simply no way we could countenance that.
And Shadow Foreign Minister Priti Patel praises Donald Trump.
America's actions were absolutely necessary. We should be under no illusions whatsoever about the threat of Iran to us all.
US Defence